Hi, team. Very good morning and good evening, all. So let's get started here. Okay, so I know we had our weekday and weekend team join together, right? Especially for a SQL session that we are going to engage. And before going into the SQL session, right, let me bring some very quick understanding of what we are going to discuss and where you can find the resources and all. So this session primarily, right? Maybe let me bring some of the points before we start this session, right? First thing is we will be having two SQL sessions, right? As we planned this week, that is on today, that is on Saturday of today, and next week Sunday, right? This is the plan. Okay, this is the first thing what we are going to primarily look into. Then what level of SQL we are going to learn? The basics, okay? In these 2 weeks, right? In these 2 days of session, maybe we are going to engage for 3 hours or 2.5 to 3 hours like that, right? We could not able to learn the entire SQL. SQL is a very big ocean again, but what we are going to do is we are going to learn the basics, maybe to, I could say or I could say as a basic, okay? Basic or near intermediate. I can't say even intermediate or advanced and all, okay? Definitely we are not going with advanced. But what we are going to do, we are going to bring up to speed, okay, in this learning, in the SQL side for the people, especially who is not having a SQL background, right? Not from a SQL background or not having a SQL background, or the people who wanted to brush up the SQL concepts to a better extent, right? For these two set of people, we are going to have this session. That's the reason we are having it by this time, not in the regular session, okay? The third thing is, the SQL, as I told you, right, guys, it is a kind of a very important, a descriptive programming language we are supposed to know, right? It is like a, for an IT engineer, for a, not only for a data engineer, I'm telling, even for a person who is working in IT, the SQL plays a very important role in terms of it acts like a mother tongue, actually, we can say. Okay, for that reason, knowing of SQL is very important. And I hope, right, all of you guys, right, whoever is attending right now, this session, as I have given you guys an input multiple times in the WhatsApp and all, you guys have gone through the 2 SQL videos that I have shared, right? In our WhatsApp description, in both of our WhatsApp group description, weekend and weekday batch WhatsApp group description, we have this video link that I have given, right? I hope you guys have spent some time on understanding about the theoretical aspects of. I did not gone through the practical implementation of the SQL in the 2 videos that I have already created. I have only given the, a theoretical aspect of it, right? I hope you guys all have gone through this theoretical aspect of understanding the SQL from the very core level, very, very basic level. I just spoken in a very basic level, right? You can say very basic. Okay, this session we are going to have to improve ourselves or to become up to speed not in a very basic level. One level up we are going to get an understanding of. See, in this video, right, I might have spoken about how we have to start learn SQL, how we have to understand or recognize the syntax. I always say don't memorize anything that we learn other than the syntax, maybe SQL syntax that requires some sort of memorization. The very, very regularly used SQLs and all, we have to put some effort of memorizing them. So in that, I have given you an idea about or given you some sort of documentation about, getting some cheat sheet for learning the SQL very quickly, right? I gave some cheat sheet and all. I'll walk through with the documents and all what you're going to use in our entire learning journey of the SQL, okay, in the two days of the learning journey of SQL, okay? These are all the overall thing that we have to consider before we go on to start working into it. The very important part is today what we are going to have is more of hands-on based. Both the days I'm talking about, okay? One is up to speed. That is nothing but we are going to all become up to speed in the SQL, understanding or maybe mitigating of SQLs, writing of SQL, plus we are going to discuss on certain interview related scenarios as well. In SQL interview scenarios, we are going to talk about. And very importantly, what you have to consider is from upcoming days, from entering into the PySpark, right, onwards, or into Databricks onwards, we are going to learn SQL only throughout. We are going to always learn without any doubt. Always will become very stronger, learn and and become very stronger in the SQL only throughout our learning journey. Okay, there is no doubt in learning SQL further and all. Don't think like only these 2 days we are getting an opportunity to learn SQL. We are going to learn throughout in our learning journey the SQL only, but more in detail, more in depth. We are going to, in fact, amalgamate the Python with SQL with the our data warehouse plus the cloud using different frameworks. What is framework? We still again yet to start understand, like batch framework, real-time framework, or in-memory framework, right? Or interactive framework like this. We are going to use multiple frameworks. These components only, especially the SQL only. SQL plays a very vital role. In all these frameworks, we apply SQL without any doubt. So these are all the things we are going to apply overall, right, in our journey of learning SQL. So don't think like this is the 2 days we are going to spend the time on learning SQL. This is for bring you all of you guys into the same speed as like how a person who is already working in SQL is considered as. Okay, so I wanted you to see like a person who is having a SQL knowledge already after these 2 days of session. So for that, what you have to do is a prerequisite is very importantly, I wanted you guys also to do the hands-on along with me. Okay, what you can do is you guys can open the SQL workbench. Whoever did not, install the SQL workbench, or whoever did not, get a chance to install and use the SQL workbench, please go and make use of the current time to get the SQL workbench software download in your local computer, get it installed, and get started with. Anybody is there like that? I did not use the SQL workbench in my project. Like anybody is there to say? Project in the sense in our so far learning. Anybody is there saying like I did not use the SQL workbench, Irfan. I did not install the SQL workbench. Anybody is there like that team? Hope all of you had the SQL workbench software installed in your computer. Is that correct? Right? Okay. If you guys did not do that installation yet, means that is fine. I'm going to help you. Wait for a while. But at least you guys installed, right? Install, not able to connect. That is okay. I'll help you. Wait for a while. Okay. So let us go ahead. Okay. Let us go ahead with the credentials. Let us go ahead with the activity of what you are supposed to start with. Okay. Let's go ahead and start, guys. So first of all, go to our drive. Right? All of you go to our drive. Right? Somewhere here, right? Our drive. If you see this. This is our drive URL, right? Where we have all the documentations and softwares and even some sort of data also I'll be placing in this location only. Okay, don't worry. So this is all the software environment where you can go and download this MySQL Workbench software in your local computer, in your Windows computer, maybe MacBook related also it is there available in the online. You can download for MacBook also and install this software in your computer first of all. Like a double click and install the batch file, right? That I hope already all of you guys have installed. So I'm just leaving this, just showing you there are softwares. I add more softwares here in the near future. Okay. For now, these 2 softwares let's consider. The MySQL Workbench and the PyCharm I have installed, or I have kept the actual software in this drive. Secondarily, you go to the stage 1 of our learning. We are in a stage 1 of our learning and we will be completing Python in a week of time, right? A week or 1.5 week maximum of time. We are going to finish this Python. So we can say data warehouse, SQL and Python. Parallelly, we are finishing SQL also by next week, right? So you can say I got a fundamental idea about data warehouse, SQL and Python. I completed stage 1 of our learning. You are going to tell very proudly. So in that aspect, if you consider, we have 3 folders here: SQL, data warehouse and Python. Right? Data warehouse we initially learned. We are supposed to learn SQL as a second item. That is okay. SQL and Python we are learning in parallel. You can consider like that. So go to the SQL folder, database learning or whatever the folder is there inside that, right? You can download this MySQL workbench. Whoever could not able to install MySQL, you can use this document to install MySQL. That is a different story. And the document, whatever I used in the video, right? The 2 videos, whatever you guys might have gone through, right? That I have given you already, right? That 2 video, whatever the PPT that I have used, it is kept over here. This is the PPT that I have used in the 2 videos. Okay. I uploaded the same PPT over here as well. Long back itself. Okay. I uploaded it earlier itself. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this folder that contains all this information already, but that is fine. Now only we are getting the time to go through this. The second thing is practice query, what I have mentioned here. In this practice query, right, I have 2 queries given here. Okay. One is like, or leave this 4th query, interview questions and all, you leave it, we'll discuss about it. You have to download, maybe all the queries you can download, but particularly, maybe you can download all these practice queries in your local. First of all, you download parallelly along with me and take these practice queries, whatever you guys have downloaded. So download this practice queries in your local and ensure you guys are copying this practice queries into some drive location, into some instructors folder or somewhere. You ensure to copy this. Under database learning or somewhere you copy this. Get it extracted. Get it extracted. So this is where we are here, right? Where we are currently here. I got the practice queries for 2025 extracted. Okay. Then open the first particular, the query that I have given here, which comprised of some create table and the insert statements. We are having some DDL and DMLs available. What is DDL? Data definition language. What is DML? Data manipulation language. I'm going to define the data and I'm going to manipulate the data. That is what it's all about, right? So this contains almost 2 tables creation, 2 interesting tables creation called department table and employees table. Like our HR department data. Our HR may have these kind of tables to maintain our information as an employees. Okay. So such kind of the schema structure, such kind of table structure we have here, which is supposed to be created in our cloud platform. Okay. What you can do is, I will create this table, right? And I will load the data into this table. You guys don't have to do anything right now, because if all of us try to do this, right, it will throw an error for us saying like already the database exists, already the table exists. Let's not do anything on this right now. We'll go and write only the read queries alone. No write operations we'll do for now. Okay, because I'm going to do this write operation once for all on behalf of all of you guys. But try to understand, before we start write any queries or any operations, first you have to create a database and then the list of tables to start write the queries, to start perform some learning opportunities on this, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load the data into this table, right, from scratch by creating these tables from scratch. And I'm going to allow you to start do some learning activity in this learning database. Okay, let's create one database called learning or learning DB, learning underscore DB. So all the learnings I'm going to modify as learning underscore DB. The entire learning database I'm modifying as learning underscore DB for making it more meaningful, more understandable. Okay, fine. So in order to perform these operations in the SQL database environment, as I told you guys, I'm going to share you guys a virtual machine where you can go and have this kind of SQL databases already running. I can share you a virtual machine which is going to hold the database already available in that VM also. You can use it locally. But here, as you all aware of, right, what I did is I went and created a SQL database instance in the cloud platform. Right, already we had one cloud database I have created called IZDB, which is running in this IP address. This is IP address where the cloud database is running. The IZDB is an instance name, a computer name, where this database MySQL 8.4x is running. We were earlier using 8x of MySQL, but now I upgraded that to 8.4x for a reason of using it much better with more options and all, right? So I had a new database formed with this version of 8.4 in a new instance in our cloud environment, in our GCP cloud environment. This is the database we are all going to connect now. Okay, how we can connect to this database? As I already told you guys, the concept of client server model we are going to use. We are going to use a model called client and a server model. That means what? This database will act like a server, a database server or a data warehouse server. You can call it in any name. We are going to have a client software installed in our computer, which is nothing but what? The database is the server, means the client software what we are going to use is called what? That I asked you to install is what, guys? Something called Workbench, right? MySQL Workbench. So go and search for Workbench that you have installed in your system already. But you guys have installed 8x version of Workbench. That is okay. It is okay. We can still use that Workbench. So go to that Workbench. Go to the Workbench. I had a lot of connections created, it seems, with this Workbench software. So what you do, if you could not able to create a connection to the remote database, what we have tried, let's try creating one. Okay, you have to go to database. You guys are following me, right? You guys have to go to database, manage connections. Manage connections. Click on database, manage connections. And I will share you the credentials here. This is the IP address. Okay. And I have a user created already called. If you go and see in this cloud database, in this cloud SQL environment, in the MySQL environment, I have already created a couple of users. One of the username is testusr. Okay. So I'm just giving you the username here. I pinged you the username and the IP address of the remote server, the cloud database server. You go and give the username as testusr and the password as insert as exclamation 123 with a capital I as a password. So I'm going to just do the same thing. I'm going to copy from the chat only this IP address. This IP address. I'm copying from the chat this IP address. I'm going to type the username as, or maybe you don't have to do directly like this, right? So first you have to do what? Go to database, manage connections, click on new in the bottom here, right? Click on the new, just name it as CloudDB underscore new or whatever. Underscore new or underscore 8.4x or whatever you can mention, because my version is 8.4x. Just I'm giving a name for an easy identification. Or new you give. Leave the old connection and all. Go and give the IP address. Then give the username as testusr. Don't give test user, just give testusr, not user, just usr. Then store the password in the vault as capital I, insert as exclamation 123 cautiously. Give OK. Click on the store in vault and give the password. Give OK. Give test connection. It may throw some warning saying like, hey, your version of database is 8.4.6, but you are using some lower version of MySQL Workbench. That is okay. You can give continue anyway. Is it giving you the success message for all of you, team? Just please let me know whether it is connecting for all of you. It's connecting, right? You are able to see the successful connection that is established. Now you give close. Go and click on this new connection, whatever I have given. Just we opened a new connection, right? Just click on that new connection and go and log in with whatever the connection that we have created. Come out of this, you can click on the database. It will show you what are all the available databases available. Click on the database, go and connect to the database like this, something like this. Connect to database you give. You can choose which database you want to connect. This is the recent database we created. Just give OK. It will be connected. You are all getting this environment, guys. Maybe what I'll do, I'll go and remove this database for the first time. I'm just getting this database removed. So all my learning content got deleted. Learning database tables got deleted. Now we are going to do it from scratch. Okay, let's go and do a database creation. Then we go to the database. It's equal to what this line of code is a database creation statement. What is a database? Database is like a container of related objects, related tables, related functions, related stored procedures, any name you can give for that. So database is a container of related objects, related tables. You can call it in any name. So I'm creating a database. It's a subject area where we can keep the related tables, which can be stored with the data. Or we can have the related programs, related views, anything we can create. Okay, done. I created a database. Then I'm telling, hey, go to the database particularly. Learning DB. This is equal to what I created one folder in a local computer, and I'm double clicking that folder and going inside that folder. The database is like a folder. Then I'm going inside the database. And then what I'm doing, I'm going to create a table inside the database. Since I use learning DB, I don't have to go and prefix the database name here. I don't require this to be done. You have to either do any one of them. One is either you have to go and give the database name as a prefix before the table, or you have to go and say use database, and you don't have to prefix this database name in the table on top of the table. Anything is good. Any one of the activity you can do. I did but both. I'm going to say create the table called departments. This is what type of query we are writing here. DDL. What is DDL? Data definition language. Data definition language, right? We are defining the data by using a data definition language as a part of SQL. It's a part of SQL. SQL comprised of DDL, DML, DCL, TCL, right? All these kind of statements, DQL, and all these kind of statements are available in our database, right? In our database, we have different types of statements, which what we have discussed in our other discussion here. What are the different types of statements that we discussed here? In the passive learning, you might have did actually. Okay, let it be. So I'm creating a database dot table name comprised of how many columns? How many columns, guys, here we have? 4 columns. Great. And each and every column is of different type. The respective type. Department ID should be of integer type. This is in MySQL. In MySQL, we usually mention the size of even an integer. But in Python, we don't mention the size. In like Oracle and all, we don't mention the size mostly. It will take the 32-bit or 64-bit integer size. And in other databases also, we don't much prefer of mentioning the size of an integer. But here, I'm mentioning the bit of the integers. I'm just mentioning it. Then we are mentioning department name, which is of type string, which is of type of variable character. Varchar means variable character. Variable character means what? We can store in this department name the character which can be with a maximum length of 30 characters, but it can be variable. 20 characters some department may be, 2 characters some department may be, or 10 characters some department may be. So the varchar represents what? One of the famous, like data type, which representing what? Variable character. It represents variable character. Variable character means it is going to occupy the space of how much I'm going to store. For example, if I store department name as HR, this department name column is occupying or can accommodate up to 30 characters, but it will occupy for this one record which contains HR as a department with how many characters? Only 2 characters. If I'm going to store HR department, it is going to occupy 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. How much we are going to store, that much characters it will occupy. That is called variable character data type. If I give char data type rather, a very simple concept I'm just bringing out, okay? You guys have to know this. If I rather mention varchar, if I mention char, for some reason it got restarted. right? Rather than varchar, if I mention char, what is the difference, guys? If I mention char of 30, what is the difference? See, both has 30 characters only. What's the difference between varchar and char? I'm going to store HR here, and here also I'm going to store HR. How much space this varchar will occupy? How much space the varchar will occupy? 2 character space in the database side. How much the char will occupy though I store only 2 characters? It will occupy only it will occupy 30 characters. The entire space will be occupied. So what it will do for occupying 30 characters? It will put space that many number of times. Yes, waste of using the space. We are unnecessarily using not the memory Jivanandam. We are using the disk space unnecessarily. The database space is occupied unnecessarily. That is the main difference between char and varchar. Okay, very basic fundamental concept that we have to know. It will take 30 characters. Though I'm not using the space, it will occupy the space for the entire that particular column value. It will already predefine that size. It will say I reserve the 30 characters is fine. Whether you use it or not, I don't bother. But varchar says we will only occupy how much you are storing the data. That is varchar. Okay, let it be. Like this, we are creating 4 column based table. One table under a database we are creating with 4 columns as a structure. That we have done. Okay, clear? Okay, whoever is having MacBook, right? I have shared in our documentation, right? A link for going with even MacBook also in our data warehouse documentation. Okay, Mohan is pinging me separately. Just I'm addressing him. Mohan, if you go to our drive, right? If you go and download this data warehouse related presentation right here, project data warehouse like this I mentioned here, under this folder, under the folder number 1, I have this documentation mentioned. In this document, if you go through, in one of the slide in the below, we'll see that slide number, right? In the slide number, I have given the link here. I have the link here, okay? I just ping that link in the group. If you go to that link, you could be able to find the software that is available for both Windows or Mac also. Go and download the software for the Mac from here, whichever the version you are into, okay? Great. So just install, it's just a plug and play software, right? Install and make use of it. Great. Okay, now we got a departments table created under the database called LearningDB. Under LearningDB, departments database, I have table I have created. You can expand and see the columns and all related to the table, right? There are concepts like triggers, constraints, indexes and all. This is not much needed for our data engineering workloads, but we'll take a quick opportunity to learn that in the upcoming days. Very quickly, I'll talk about it. Whether you have to know that or not, that is fine. Very quickly, I can talk about it. But very importantly, I want to concentrate on a table we created with some columns. So you have two pages here. One is an admin page and a developer page. You go and see the developer page with the schemas. You can choose the option here. Go to the schema tab and you can see the table name with the under the database called LearningDB. You can find departments columns listed over here. Whatever I created, it reflected in the cloud database in US, and you guys are all accessing from anywhere across the world. My table, what I created. So I don't have any data in the table right now loaded. I'm going to create another table. That is employee table. Employee comprised of employee ID, first name, last name, all are varchar data type. And I'm putting one constraint along with the table creation itself. There are two types of constraints are there, but what is, leave the two types and all. Just consider constraint is a concept that is available in databases. What is constraint? In a mere English, what we call it as a constraint, guys. In an English language, I'm telling. What we call, what is a constraint? Okay, great. Condition, restriction, rule. The best terminology that we can use is rule. Clear? So I'm putting a rule here. What rule here I'm putting? Hey, I have to have some data inserted into this table with the last name should be not null. Whether I'm inserting value for first name or not, but last name should be not null. If I'm trying to insert a record into this table with the last name as null, don't accept. Don't accept the data from some front end. Somebody is capturing the employee information. If they are not giving last name, don't allow them to insert the record into this table. Like this, I can tell. So after I created this table, since I put rules in this table to follow, like saying what if somebody is trying to load the data into this table with last name as null, don't allow. Email as null, don't allow. And hire date with null, if they pass, don't allow. We need a hire date of an employee. But that in a what format? Date format. Date will be in what format? YYYY-MM-DD, which is a default format. Like the salary and what is the commission percentage to the salary? What is the job ID? He belongs to which job? The job table I can have, and I can have a job ID of that, commission percentage, manager ID. This employee is reporting to which manager? Then this employee belongs to which department? To identify all this, I'm adding some more ID column to this employee table along with other employee information, ID, first name, last name, email address, and everything. So this is the basic table we are creating to hold the general employee information. Common information about the employee I'm going to hold in this table. With me, guys, we are going through these columns, right? The only strange thing what we have in this column is something called what is not null. What is not null? Other than that, we are good. We are good with everything else, right? In this table. So now I'm going to create this table. If I try to create this table, what happens? If I just run this entire query, I just click on here, this button I can click to execute this query. One or multiple queries, if I have, it will execute all of them. But I have only this one query has to be executed, right? I can choose that query and execute as well. Anything is good. So let me execute this query. This query is getting executed, but it is throwing an error in the below. What error it is throwing, Irfan? Already there are no database selected. I'm just going to create one file in a folder, but without selecting which folder I want to create this file. So what I have to do for this, to make this run successfully, what I have to do? Don't get touched. Parallelly, first of all, go through and then you can go and see. So integer display with which width is in deprecated will be removed in the feature release. It's not an error, it's a warning. It's a warning. So you don't have to worry. It got affected. It got created. It's not an error, Srinath. Okay. It's a warning. Okay, great. So what I can do, I can say either use the database name learning DB. Hey, go to the learning DB. I'm just telling, I created one folder, right? Inside that folder, you create this file. I'm telling like that. So use learning DB. I can run this query first. And then I can run this query second. To say what? Hey, create this table under the learning DB database. It is throwing some warning. That is okay. What they are telling, Irfan, mentioning of the size for an integer is not a good idea. As I told you, right? Integer with the width that you are mentioning is deprecated. In the upcoming releases, we remove this. But MySQL support the width also for integer. But how the modern databases are telling, like, BigQuery or Synapse or Athena or Redshift kind of cloud-based databases or modern data warehouses and all says what? Don't mention the width of this integer, just give integer. Like this, if you fix this issue, if you fix this size, right, now without mentioning, you can't see this warning. As Srinath is mentioning, right? I'm seeing this error. It's not an error. Error will be shown in red. Warning will be shown in yellow, but still it executes. It completed the table creation. You can see the table got created. Where can you see the table? This learning DB, you can see the table here. How? By refreshing. You have a small refresh button here, right? You are seeing this. You can refresh and see, yes, the table got created. Employee table got created. But what they are suggesting, Irfan, don't create this employee table with the size of the integer mentioned. That is deprecated. So drop table, employees, drop the table, choose that only that query and run. Now you do what? Again create this table. By doing this, you will not get that warning. Are you finding this, Srinath and team? With me on this? So how to fix the query? How to understand the issue? It is telling the usage of the size is not advisable. Right? Integer display with the width is deprecated and will be removed in the future release. So don't give the integer size. Varchar size you can give. Date also not required. Date is 10 character size. Like this they are suggesting. So I'm just following their suggestion. Maybe we can go and fix this here also, because I used this earlier for the lower version of the database. You don't have to use this. Remove all this, whatever the integer size that I'm mentioning. Even here also. Maybe I will upload this updated document for your future need as well. Done, team? Are you all with me in this? Okay, now what is the significance of having this? Last name not null, email ID not null, or hire date not null, job ID not null. The concept of constraints can be applied. There are 5 types of constraints. 2 integrity constraints and 3 common constraints. Check constraint, not null constraint, or unique constraint, primary key constraint, foreign key constraint. But in a database learning, it is okay. You can say constraint means what. But in a, like a data lake or a lake house or a big lake, like kind of data engineering learning, the constraints will not be applied in the tables. These constraints, whatever we are having in the traditional databases, right? Point of sale databases, OLTP databases, right? This is not applied in the data warehouses even. What is the reason behind this? Can you tell me? Can you tell me? What is the reason behind why the constraints are not preferable or applicable in the reporting systems, in the analytics systems?
The field should not be null. The field should not be null.
No. The question is, we don't apply these constraints in the data warehouses systems or in the, like big data systems and all. We will remove this condition in those kind of systems. If it is a database systems, we will use this. OLTP systems means we will use this. Why? As Kritika Devi is mentioning, if you put a rule, right, it can't progress much better, right? I forgot that Kamal movie, right? Faghat Fasil will tell, right? Without rule, we'll work. If you put a rule, we can't able to work as an agents or whatever, right? He will say, if you don't put any rule, I can work much better, much faster. Like this, he used to tell, right, in that movie. I forgot that movie name. What is that movie name, guys? Vikram movie, yeah, Vikram. He used to tell, right? So when I ask for some other questions, I'm not getting answer very quickly, but see how many people are responding. Okay, fine, guys. So, like the constraints will be applied, right? Only in the front-end environment. See, for example, if you see this prior database learning that we have made, you can see here, we learned about some concept called the database will get the data via the point of sale system. The database will get the data into the database environment via point of sale system. Who did not see that, the particular video, please go through that. You will get some clarity. So the data will be ingested via the transaction, the credit card transaction, or you are going to maybe perform a GPay or whatever the activity, Paytm or anything. Through that process, the OLTP process, online transaction process, the data will be entered. At the time when I do an OLTP, the customers are going to give some input via the billing personality or whoever it may be. At the time, there is a chance of making mistake is very high. So what they will do, before they insert a single record, at a time, one transaction, one customer information I can store. At the time when one record is getting inserted, I can able to put the rule and allow. If bulk data is getting inserted or performed with some transformation or analytics and all, at that time, I should not put a rule always. So for that reason, the concept of whatever we are applying as the constraint, right? Like something called not null constraint or a check constraint. Check for the value of last name has to be something like this only. It should not be more anything else other than this value. I can say check for the values has to be only the job ID has to be ID A, ID B, ID C like this. I can go and put only it needs to have this much IDs that are all allowed like this. One constraint called check constraint we have. Another constraint called not null constraint we have. Another constraint called unique constraint we have. We can say this first name has to be unique. Which column can be an unique in this table team? Which column can be unique? ID. Identifier column. Employee ID should be unique. So I can put a constraint like this and all to ensure there is no duplicate employee IDs inserted into this table from the front end application. So try to know about what is constraint here, but don't try to apply the constraints in the data engineering world, in the data warehouse world. Mostly we don't apply constraints in those environments because constraints will unnecessarily go and check for each and every record whether it is following this constraint or not, which will reduce our performance, as Kritika have mentioned. And since we are into the analytical platform and the data processing platform, not into the online transaction platform, we are not into a transactional system. We are not transactional. Transaction is done by our parent system itself, the source system who is giving the data to us, right? They itself will do the transaction. So in the transactional system, it is good to use constraints. Clear? But we are not differentiating as we are into analytical, processing, transactional like that and all. You consider we are one level down. That means what? We are in a source system level. We are working in a database commonly. We are working in a transactional database even commonly for getting a better understanding of what is database. So today we are not putting the rule of saying, no, I don't put constraint and all. I'm okay to even put constraint. We are taking a quick opportunity to learn what is even constraint. But we don't apply this constraint more frequently or much of or mostly we don't use constraints in the big data warehouse in those kind of elevated platforms, higher end platforms. Very clear on this, what I'm speaking to. All of you are with me. Constraints are used in the OLTP systems, in the transactional systems, in the point of sale systems, not in our big data or data warehouse environments. But try to take a quick opportunity to understand about constraints means a rule that can be applied at the column level or at the tables level. There are two types of constraints. We have integrity constraints and regular constraints. Primary key and foreign key are used for creating integrity between the tables. Not null check, unique constraints and all are useful for checking the particular column values, which is supposed to be intact. So for example, this table we created with the constraints and all applied, right? When I try to insert into this employees table with the columns like employee ID and last name alone, I'm going to insert, or first name alone, I'm going to insert with the values of 1, Irfan. But I'm not inserting last name. So if I go and run this query, what it is telling, sorry, Irfan, the field last name does not have a default value. See, it is not allowed to load without the last name you mentioned. Otherwise, what you do, put a not null and default of what has to be inserted. Not applicable. Something it has to insert. You keep a default value at least. Then if you don't even mention the value here, what it will do, it will automatically put the last name with what value? Default of not applicable. But since I told not null as a constraint, it needs something to be loaded in that table column value. Otherwise, it won't work. It is throwing an error. Irfan, when you create the table, right? If you are not going to load the data to the table column, at least you give a default value. Otherwise, load with some value. Give something called Muhammad here. Then only I'll work. Otherwise, I don't allow you to insert the record into the table. Now I am loading the last name here. That we created this table with what else as constraint? Email. Now it will throw an error related to the email. It will say, sorry, Irfan, the email has to be inserted. What it is telling? Email field does not have a default value. Leave this default even. But what it is telling, at least I need email with default, because you've given not null for email also. Like this. You can't able to insert a record to the table until you fulfill all these constraints. I'm just showing one example of a constraint. Only one constraint called not null constraint, not all the constraints I mentioned here. You are with me in this team. We got a table created with some constraints enforced. We enforce some constraints. Okay, done. Let it be team. Let it be. Let's move forward. Now I'm going to insert some records to the table. Right, I created departments table, employee table. Department table I'm inserting administration, marketing, purchasing, like couple of department information, department rows. Couple of inserts I'm doing. We call this insert as what type of insert? We are inserting the data to the departments table. We are inserting record by record insert. We call this insert in general as what type of insert? Sequential insert. We can do the insert in a what fashion as well? What fashion as well? Bulk fashion as well. We call it as a bulk load or bulk insert. Bulk insert or bulk load. If you remember, we were going with our Python program to load the data to the table. The same MySQL table only we also loaded. But we have taken the entire file content and loaded the data into the table as a bulk by using what? This toSQL function. We told what this toSQL, you go and take the data from the memory and dump the data into the table like this we told. You take the table, you go and load the data to the table by dumping it. Just throw the data to the table. Do a bulk insert. We did a bulk insert in our data ingestion. But here we are doing what type of insert? Sequential insert. Which one is faster? Doing the record by record insertion is faster, or doing the bulk insert is faster? Okay, take an opportunity to understand. There are two types of loading data is there. In sequential load, bulk load. What we did is a sequential load. Sequential load is not scalable. Bulk load is scalable. But when we want to do bulk load, we should not have what in the table? I'm going to take the entire data without worrying about how the data is. I'm going to dump it in the table. For making bulk load, we need to have the table without constraints. Right? Then only the rules has to be broken. Then only the table can be loaded just as a bulk without any verification, without any rules applied. With me, guys, what I'm speaking. So in the data warehouse platform, we load the data in a bulk. However, we are going to do the cleanup process. Did we do the cleanup process? Did we do this cleanup process in the initial layers? As we are going to do the cleanup operations, getting the data and loading it into the table in a bulk fashion is not a big deal. But here, let's assume we are inserting one by one department information into the table. One by one employee information into the table. Whenever the employee joins, I'm going to collect his information and loading it. At that time, I got to go and mostly perform a sequential insert. All these inserts did not execute at the same time. That got inserted in a different period of time. Some employee joined on this date. Some employee joined on some other date. So all these inserts happened in a different period of time. So we don't have to worry on verifying this record while inserting by applying the constraint. If the last name is not given, if the department is not given, the date of joining is not given, I'm not going to accept this data. So I got the data inserted, the first row inserted. So how do you insert the record to the table? By clicking this button. It will execute all the sequence of inserts. It is completing the entire insert of data to the table. Now we got employees and department table ready. This is not our learn. This is just a one-time data preparation work we are doing for doing the learning at the next level. What is the learning that we are supposed to do? We have to mainly concentrate not on the DDL creation. This is DDL. We have to mainly concentrate on which part of the SQL, which part of the database learning? DQL, not DML. DQL we have to concentrate much on. What is DQL? DQL is data query language. We have to know how to write queries on the table. To make you guys feel comfortable to write queries, right? I have listed all the queries, right, in a category of, like least to the top, complexity. Not very complex. As I told, right, maximum we are going with a very basic and less than an intermediate level of learning here in these 2 days of session. I'm not concentrating on the complex queries. However, we are going to learn a lot of more queries by doing this, by having this as a base. So I wanted you to concentrate on this list of queries that I'm going to give to get your practice made successful. So I'm having a Excel sheet that I have created for making our life simple to learn. I have created one Excel sheet. SQL practice queries. So post you complete this activity of at least understanding what is the DDL. What are all DDL here? What are all DML here? The create table is a what? DDL. The insert into the table values is what? Yep. That is a DML, data manipulation language. We are manipulating the data, right? Data manipulation language. And DQL comes under data manipulation only, but we can call it as a DQL separately. Data manipulation language, insert, update, delete, right? And DQL is select. Great. This is what I covered in the prior video that I have shared you guys, which I wanted you to go through. Maybe whoever did not find still time to not go through, please go through this video to understand what are all the types of SQLs that is available, right? DDL, that is all this. Creating of tables, views, databases, functions, all these are DDL. Dropping the table, creating the table, altering the table, truncating the table. All these are DDLs. The DQLs are all what? Writing queries. This is DQL. DQL is major. I'm putting a big red mark here to say DQL. DQL is very important. We have to spend a lot of time in learning DQL only. That's what we are going to do next. When you write a DQL, how it works? Though you write a SQL in one order, there is an order we have to use for writing SQL. Basically, all of us has to know this standard syntax. It's an ISO standard SQL. SQL dialect. We call it as a common ISO standard SQL dialect. It's an ANSI SQL. ISO SQL we used to call it as. How we write a SQL? We have select, then from, then where, then group by, then having, then order by, then limit. These are all the standard list of SQL query that we write in general, which I have listed over here for your reference. Okay. And it is not case sensitive. You can give select with capital case, init upper or lower or anything you can give. Right? So, but what happens in the background, as I discussed in that video, I talked in detail about this in the video. The select statement or any queries that you write in one order, it won't run in the same order. It will run in a different order in the background. What is the order in which the SQL will run? First, it will go and collect the data from the table, load it into the memory. Today, I spoken with the weekend team. You remember, guys? If I write a query, what language it will use to go and maybe fetch the data from the underlying storage, underlying hard disk, and apply some transformation and then produce the result. It uses, see, I wrote a query. Query is what language? You guys are telling C, C++. Query is what language? Declarative language. For me, I feel like an English. I write a query in an English. This is like a English, right? I'm telling, hey guys, select from some table where apply some filter, group the data based on some column. With the filter applied on that grouped data, the aggregated data, you apply some filter, order the data in an order. Limit only showing this much results to me. Like this, I'm telling like in English. This is how we feel. Hey, I wrote a query, it is running as a query in the background. But actually speaking, it will be converted to what in the background? Team. As you guys are mentioning, it will be converted to what in the background? It will be converted to a low-level program in the background. Possibly what language it will use? C or C++ or VC++ or Java or Python. These kind of languages it will use in the background. It won't run the query as you wrote. You feel like, hey, I wrote some query, it executed and produced me the result. But in the background, what all is going to happen is very huge. That is the architecture of database. Do you want to know the architecture of database, how it works, guys? The current session is not for discussing anything much about theory. But do you want to know about the architecture of the database, how it works at the very high level? Right? I spoken this architecture in our SQL, 2 SQL sessions, the preliminary SQL sessions that I conducted, that I wanted you guys to go through and come, right? Please go through that. You will get a clarity of, I discussed in detail about this concept, right? But at the very high level, what happens? When you write a query in a database, where the data will come from? Tell me guys, whoever have gone through that video, tell me. I say like when I write a query, the data came from where? You will say what? Hey, I wrote a query, select star from employees, limit 100. When I say like this, where this data coming from? You say where this data is coming from in general. The data is coming from table, we say, right? Always. True? True? That is correct. Whatever you told is correct. I'm not telling it is wrong. But in the background, what happens? The data will come from what? From the disk, where the data is stored in a form of data files or whatever. The scratch files or whatever are the, we call it as like a kind of a scratch files. We call it as a kind of a, like a special encoded files, serialized files. The data is present in that form. From there, what will happen? The data will be loaded into the memory. We call that memory in multiple terminology in different language, in different databases. In Oracle, we call it as a PGA, SGA, System Global Area, Program Global Area. In Teradata, we call it as something called AMP or something called Binet driver. In different places, the terminology used differently to talk about like where this data will come from, the disk to the memory. Right? In Spark, we are going to call it as the data will be loaded in the distributed cache. Like this, different terminology we use. Doesn't matter. Concept remains same. Data will come from the disk to the memory. Then the schema, the metadata that we have imposed on the table, right? That will come from the metadata layer. This integer, this varchar or date, all this data type will come from a separate place. And both will be married. It will do what? It will bring the structure from one place. This is the structure. Customer ID, column name, data type integer, customer name, data type varchar of 10 or 20 or 100 or whatever. This information will come from the metadata layer. The data will come from the disk. Then I will marry the data with the metadata and produce the result in the screen as a table output. For that, there are a lot of background processes will run. System monitor, program monitor, SMON, PMON, or redo logs. Lot of things will work in the background in the respective environments, respective databases. So don't underestimate it. Just like that, I wrote a query, the data came. It does lot of magic in the behind scene. But basically, the data in the disk, when I write a select statement, we think like, okay, the data is coming from the table and displaying it in the screen. Actually, it won't. First of all, the query, whatever we wrote, will be not run in the same format as we expected. We wrote the query like this means it will be converted to this format and get executed. Then the query will be converted into low-level program like C, C++, Java, or Python, or whatever the language. That language will go and ask the processor saying like, hey, I wanted to collect the data and apply some processing techniques on that by using the collection data types and all, list, dictionary, tuple, or set, like this kind of collection data type I want to apply on the data, including the integer data type or string data type, whatever is provided in the metadata layer. I want to apply all this, and I want to produce a result in the screen to the Irfan, to the person who will write this query. Then the CPU will say, wait, I'll ask my database engine to go and collect the data from the disk, putting it into the memory. Then I ask him to convert the data into a collection format internally. I'll ask them to run a loop, for loop and all. Then I'll ask them to take the row by row of data, then column by column of data. I'll ask them to slice and dice. And then I'll ask I'll do the processing of the data with the help of my processor registers, CPU cores. Then I'll go and produce the result in the screen to the user like this. That's a very big drama is happening in the beginning scene. It's not just like that we write a query, it produces the result. Though we find, oh, I wrote the query, the data is produced as a result in my screen. That's a big game is played in the beginning scene. Very clear, team, what I'm telling here. But this detailed architecture I discussed in that session. Please go through that session. That's where I'm keep telling. Please go through that session, which is there in the WhatsApp description. I asked you guys a couple of times to go through that. Whoever did not go through, please take a time to go through to get a foundational understanding of database. Most of the people does not have that foundational understanding. But if you get that foundational understanding once for all, don't have to memorize anything. Get that foundational understanding means you have a clarity of what you are going to even learn next. I'm going to talk about Spark in another week, saying like a Spark. It is going to read the data from the storage layer in a form of memory containers, in a form of memory. It's an in-memory computation engine. Like this, when I say, you have to correlate, oh, database also does like that only. I learned about database also read the data from the file and put it in the memory. Then it will allow me to process the data in the memory by keeping it in the memory by using the collection types or the data types and all. Same thing Spark is also going to do, but Spark will allow us to do openly because it's an open source product, and Spark will not use one computer to do this. Spark will use multiple computers RAM to do this. That's the difference we are going to find. Distributed in-memory computation. Database have a restriction of using memory, but Spark does not have a restriction. It says I can expand horizontally to any extent. I can scale to any extent that I need. Like this, it will say. So this foundation only applied in Spark and anywhere else, but in a distributed fashion. Okay, this learning will help you to learn that also much better. So take a while to go through that video what I shared you guys already. Okay, fine. Let it be, guys. Leave it. We'll come back to here. Okay, so the architecture works in such a way like that. In the background, a lot of things are happening. We are going to practice on how to write these queries only. What is this query will do, guys? Select star from table name, where limit 100. What it will do? It will go and from the table name, it will go and select what? It will go and select all the columns. Star represents what? Everything. After it selects all the data from the database table, after fetching all the data from the disk to the memory, it is going to limit only 100 rows to be displayed in the screen. Okay, how much this one single query that I wrote is very important in terms of clearing interviews in the companies related to BigQuery that we are going to use in near future. We are going to learn BigQuery as one of the very, very important tool in the market. It has a huge need in the market. Agree or not? Agree, team? Agree the BigQuery is having a huge importance in the market? Okay. When I'm writing this query like this, the knowing of this architecture will help you how much in BigQuery learning. Let me tell you. Right? Somebody asked you, wait, did you do any performance optimization in BigQuery? Yes, I did performance optimization. What you did? Rather, I write a query like select star from table name limit 100 in BigQuery. The same query will work in BigQuery also. It's not like we are learning only MySQL here. We can go to BigQuery here. BigQuery is also like a SQL database. Okay, but it is used for a larger purposes. It's a large scale distributed data warehouse. So we can use this. When I'm going to write the same query here, there is a table called bank ledger flattened table. There is a ledger table that we created, a bank ledger table we created, which contains 166,194 rows of 73 MB size. Now I'm going to run a query on this table. Select star from table name, limit 1000. Google itself is asking me to run the query like this. I'm running the query like this. It's going to produce me the result in the screen. Great. I fetched how many records from the table? Google will charge me how? Because it's a cloud platform. I have to consider the charge also. This is not cloud. I mean, though it is a cloud, but we hosted the database in cloud, but this is our own service we are running. It's not a kind of a managed service. It's our own service. We are Google is not going to manage our data and tables and database, the storage and everything. We are going to manage. We are going to tell how much storage I want, how much storage I want to use. But whereas this BigQuery is being totally managed by Google. We are going to store the data in their infrastructure, their disks, their format of disk we are going to store. So what Google will tell, Irfan, with the architecture, what MySQL or Google or anybody works, how it works. If you write a query from a table, it will go and fetch from the order of query is very important here to go and answer the entry question in BigQuery. I'm telling you the importance of the 2 videos learning, guys. Again, I'm telling the 2 videos learning is going to give an importance of what you know. When I write a query like this, the order of query is not like the way how we run. It is going to first run from the table, fetch the data, then select the columns, then apply the limit of 1000. So what is happening? From the underlying storage of the Google underlying disk storage, it is going to fetch the entire data to the memory. And then only it is going to limit 1000 rows. So I am going to pay, this table contains 1,60,000 and odd records, right? I'm going to pay for fetching 1,60,000 and odd records or only 1000 records. Tell me, team. Tell me, I'm going to pay only for 1,000 records or 1,60,000 records. Our friend Pakir is attending interview in BigQuery, right, Pakir? You are in a very important need of attending interview in BigQuery, right? But the answer is not correct. Why I'm telling the foundation is needed for that reason. Pakir, just I'm taking you as an example. Don't think in other way, right? The Google will charge me not for 1000 records. The Google will charge me for the entire data. You see here the job information. It is telling what? How much bytes they are billing me? I fetched how many records? 1000 records. But they are charging me for the full amount, full data. Though I did not fetch the full data. With me what I'm speaking to? They are charging me for how much? What they are telling, this query will process 73 MB of data. The total table itself is containing that much capacity only, that much storage only it occupied. It occupied 73 MB and it is charging me 73 MB of charge. For 73 MB, how much the charge Google is incurring, that charge they are making. Though I fetched only 1000 rows. Why? Why, guys? Why Google is doing in that way? Limit in BigQuery is not for restricting the cost. Limit in BigQuery is to restrict the number of records I want to see. Deepika, limit is a SQL query to restrict the number of records that I want to see. Okay, not for reducing the cost. For reducing the cost, we have other strategies has to be used. For that only, we are using the terminology called what? performance optimization. That part we discuss. So for reducing this volume of data that we are going to incur, we have to use partitioning, clustering, such kind of concepts. That is a different ball game we have to play. Don't worry on that. I'm not diluting, talking about all those. Vasant is telling, right? That is what again and again I'm telling you guys, right? The only thing, what is that I'm telling? From the disk, the data will be copied to the memory entirely, then only it will restrict, because the order of execution of the query matters here. From the table it will fetch, then only it will apply the filter, then only it will select the data, then only it will apply the limit. So however I'm reading all the data from the disk to the memory, so how much data we are reading from the disk to the memory, they are charging me. So I'm not going in depth to that cost, like performance, all this and all, leave it aside. Just I'm giving you a proof of what we are discussing. Can you prove? Can anybody prove? Right? I met DBS today. I met one of the DBA, right? Raj, I met you today, right? Can you prove, Irfan? I'm working as a DBA for almost 10 years. I know like from the disk, the data will come to the memory. But by any chance, can you prove to anybody? You can't. Just I'm trying to prove that. Take it in that way. Why they are charging me for the entire data? Because they are fetching entire data from the disk to the memory. That's where they are charging me. Following me, guys, what I'm speaking? The core understanding you are getting me, what I'm trying to convey here. Even as a DBA, you can't prove this. Just I'm trying to prove this. Take it in that way. Take it in that way. So this proves what? Hey, the limit is not applied first, and then the select is happening, and then from is happening. The from is happening first, then select of the column is happening second, then the limit is applied third. You're able to understand? That is what it is happening. Okay, I'm going to select only account ID from the table. I'm not fetching all the columns. How much they are charging me? How much they are charging me? They are charging me only lesser cost, not 170 MB. Why? Why? Can anybody answer who is attending interviews in BigQuery or whoever works in BigQuery? Can anybody answer this question? How this is effective? How this is happening? Great question what Srinath is asking. But the answer for this is because BigQuery works in a yes, great answer. Priyanka. Because Priyanka already have cleared some interviews and she got some offers. The very first person to get offer in our team. Right, Priyanka? You got this question, Priyanka, in interviews? Mohan has an idea. Pakir, you are also attending the interview. You have that idea, right? This is because of BigQuery is a columnar database. Whereas MySQL? Today I talked about that in the weekend discussion. I had that discussion, right, guys? Did I told this word? MySQL is what type of database? MySQL is what is an opposite of columnar? Row-oriented database. Row-oriented database. So if I go and ask in Google, hey, MySQL is a columnar or row-oriented database. If I ask what it will say, yeah, take care, Pungodi. Sorry for the take care. What is MySQL? In MySQL, if I write the same query, if in MySQL I write the same query, will it charge me less or huge? Just as an example, I'm asking. When I choose only a column in BigQuery, it is charging me only for the column what I chosen. In MySQL, if I do the same, will it be charging me only for the column that I fetched, or entire row it will fetch and then the column it will filter? It will charge me fully because MySQL is a row-oriented database. It knows how to access only the rows, not column-wise. But the BigQuery says, I am not a row-oriented database. I am a column-oriented database. This is the nitty-gritty we have to identify between the BigQuery and MySQL and all whatever we are going to learn. So what is BigQuery is telling? I'm a columnar database. I'm going to only charge you for which column you are selecting. This is one of the important factor to consider in BigQuery. Just I'm taking you to the BigQuery to make you understand the architecture of database case. When I write a query, select star from table name, it is going to fetch the data from the disk to the memory. How much disk to the memory they are going to fetch, that is the charge they are going to incur. Though I'm mentioning the limit here, the table contains 1 lakh record means they will fetch 1 lakh records into the memory or only 100 records to the memory. That's the only question I have right now for you guys. Limit is a very simple functionality that we are using, but it has a big, the term behind it, the big performance optimization cost factor behind the limit. Now tell me the answer. The limit will be applied and then the data will be fetched to the memory, or the data will be fetched to the memory after that the limit will be applied. Tell me, team. 1,000 records are there in the table. 10,000 records are there in the table. I'm going to fetch. I'm going to say limit 100 rows. How much data will be fetched to the memory? To the memory, how much data will be fetched? Whether display 100 rows, I'm telling. Whether 10,000 rows will be fetched or 100 rows will be fetched. It will fetch 10,000 rows, then it will limit only 100 rows out of 10,000, deleting 99,000 records, 99,900 records will be deleted post that. That is how limit works. So don't think when I do limit, it is going to display me only 100 records. Great. Great. It will display only 100 records or 10 records, whatever you are writing. But actually it fetch how many records from the underlying table? All 10,000 records or 1 lakh records. And it will delete again that balanced record out of, rather than 10 balanced data, it will delete. That is the way how the limit works. So I'm just trying to bring what is limit and how the order of SQL works. First, from table, select the columns, then limit. Though you write a query in one order, it works in a different order. You are getting all this proven, guys, now with me in this. Did you made confused, or did you guys got confused in this, or you are with me in this? I have taken you to a way behind thing, columnar, or all the other concepts and all. Forget about it. Don't worry. The casting factor and all, don't get confused of. Just the basic thing of what I told. I am interested in only seeing the data from this loan file, only of how many records I want to display to you guys, only this 30 records. Only this 30 records I'm interested in showing to you guys. But I'm loading the entire data to this memory and I'm restricting only 30 to show. That is called limit. With me? With me, the way how limit works. Okay, guys, clear? That's how the limit works. Okay, let it be. We will go further. So I just wrote a query. This one query has this much information to think about. The way how I wrote the query, it will not work in the same way. That's what I discussed in detail in our that video. Please go through that video. Please go through that video. Okay, team? With me to understand all this concept. And I talked about what is database or schema, tables, columns, data type, row or a record. All these concepts I discussed over there. Just try to go through. Now we will go and enter into the hands-on. Now we'll start enter into the hands-on. So what you are supposed to do? How limit is different from row ID? That's a very big concept again, Deepika. What I could simply say, row ID or row number or maybe like index, all these are, we call it as a pseudo columns. Pseudo columns means what? It is not a physical column. It is an internal column either, or it is not a physical column even either in the table. Okay. Limit is a kind of a condition, whereas these are all columns. Either it's a physical or a logical columns. Okay. Using these columns, we can able to restrict the data, or the rows with the function what row ID can be used or the limit can be used to restrict the data even. Okay. Both are entirely a different ball game to play, but we can use the row ID or row number or index to go and filter the data by applying a where class. Limit is not a where class. Where can be more efficient than the limit, because using where we can go and apply some concept called push down optimization, some concept called predicate push down. These are all the part we learn in a later point of time. So row ID is not available in every databases. Row ID is the property of only one database called what? Row ID is only available in one database. What is it? Okay, I'm not talking about row ID much in detail. The reason being it's only available in Oracle. We don't want it to go very specific to a database. Okay, keep it aside. We'll deal about it. Okay, however, I'll deal about some, like sort of like windowing functions and all. Don't worry on the row ID for now. Okay, limit is entirely a different ballgame than the row ID. Okay, take it in that way for now to answer the question. Okay, guys, done. Now we got a table created. We got some data loaded. We wrote some simple SQL query, a DQL query, to fetch the data from the table and saw the result, just like that we did. Now let's go further down to go and execute some queries, which I have given it in an Excel sheet for your reference. So have you guys downloaded this Excel sheet? SQL practice queries. This queries I wanted you to practice along with me. I'll talk about this query and I'll parallelly execute this query. I have captured all the details about this query also. What type of query is this? For in a very layman perspective, you can consider. In a very layman perspective, you can consider this. For everybody, it should address why we are focusing on this. What is the learning focus of this? What is the topic of this? Okay, take it in a very simplified perspective to learn this. Okay, don't get complicated. Basics of select we are going to understand. Then basics of where, basics of order by, basics of where, basics of filtering, the text filtering or date filtering, like that. Then using nulls, using distinct. So I categorize this into 5 states, 5 levels. Level 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything has, I hope like 10 queries I have created for everything. Yes, 10 queries. So let's take this and go through, guys. From the given table, we are going to write these queries. So without having this description of this, the description, the question behind this, I wanted to ask this as a question. I want to get the answer for that. Maybe we can do it in both ways. Either I can show you the query and I ask you, what is the outcome of this? Right? All of you try to answer, please. Okay. Select star from employees when I do. As far we understand what it will produce, what it will result in. It will select all the records from a given table. Record means what? Record means what? The column and a row, right? All the rows, all the columns it will display. That is a record. That is records, we can say, right? So display all the records from the table is nothing but select star from table name. That means all rows and columns it will display. You can call it as a records from a table or all rows and columns from a table, you can say. Great. Great. The next level, right? We go with these levels today. Maybe in the upcoming week, I'll take you guys to the one more level down. We'll go with more complex discussion next week. For now, we go with a very simple discussion. So what you have to concentrate here, concentrate on how to fetch all the data using select. What you are getting as an outcome, what you are doing, right? What it will do. What it will do, and what you can concentrate here is, using the select star from table name, we can fetch all the data from the table. We are not wasting anything. We are not fetching all the data from the table, from the underlying disk, and putting it into the memory. Then we are not deleting something that we don't want it in terms of columns or rows. We are retaining everything in the memory and displaying that output in the screen as well. But what we have to be cautious here, if I try to display all the records from a table to the output. My output environment, my output memory could not able to handle that much. So there is a chance our query maybe keep running in my UI or in my this thing, right, in my output environment, which is not looking much better. So basically what we do, we go and apply the limit in the queries in general. Every query that we write, have it as a practice of applying limit. Okay, guys, but it's okay. You don't have to apply even limit also, it works. What this query will do, guys? What this query will do? This query will display what Divya you are writing, fetch only. Rather, you can say what? It display only, it shows only, it display only the columns called first name and last name and salary. It won't display all the columns. But will it display all? Will it display all rows? It will display all the rows, right? Display these columns from the table, selecting specific columns from the table and all rows from the table. It select all the specific columns, but all rows from the table. Agree, team? Correct? Correct? Okay. What is this one? It displays all columns, displays all columns and filter certain rows meeting that criteria. A very, very important factor to consider. What are the important factors to consider in the background for these two queries particularly? In an architectural perspective, in a background perspective. What and all you guys have to consider here in these two queries? This query, though we select only 3 columns from the given table, it will actually read how much data from the disk to the memory. The second query I'm talking still. I have 10 columns in my table, let's assume, for example. It will fetch how many columns, how many rows to the memory, then it will display how many columns in the output, how many rows in the output. I have 10,000 rows in this table, or let's go and check how many really we have. Tell me the answer for this query. Tell me the answer for this particular query. Employees and department we have, right? We have how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 columns are there. How many rows are there in this query? We can do what? Select count of star from this table. Can I mention like this? It will return how many rows? It will return 31 rows that we have in this table. So now when I write, select only the 2 columns or 3 columns with whatever we have here in this document. With whatever the data that we have in this document, let's take it. When I run this query, it will fetch only the given columns. 3 columns with how many rows? 31 rows. 31 rows it fetch with the given columns alone. But in the background, what happens? It fetch all the rows, all the columns from the disk to the memory, but it only displays 3 columns with 31 rows. Great team. Now, what's next? So this query is fetch 31 rows and 11 columns. Fetch 31 rows and 11 columns and display 3 columns and 31 rows. Great. Correct, team. Whatever I mentioned is correct. Very clear on this? Okay. Now let's go to the next query. Let's go to the next query. Here, what will happen? Select star from employee where salary is greater than 8,000. So what I can say, hey, it fetch. In general, it fetch every columns and every rows. But what it will display? In the background, this is nature. This is natural. We can't stop that. But what it will display? It will display all 11 columns with how many rows? With the filter, whichever is meeting this criteria of salary greater than 8,000 alone will be responded, will be produced as a result. Okay, this is equivalent to what in Python? This is equivalent to what in Python? If I had to write this as a Python program, this same thing I want to write it in Python. How do I write? What are all the constructs we have to use in Python? Great guys, great. But what are the constraints or constructs I had to use in Python? We have to use control structure. Under the control structure, we have to use conditional structure and what else? And looping construct. Whatever we learned as for loop or while loop and the where class that we learned, right? Both the if condition we learned, right? Both we have to apply to simulate this in Python. Python has this many rows. Okay, I want to fetch the rows and I want to filter certain rows with certain criteria. How can I do that? Right? With the complex data type, we can achieve that. So we have to use all these concepts here. Collection data type we have to use. Agree, team? I don't want to go to the Python right now, but just we can use like this. Think about this. Have a thinking about this. But very pretty interesting thinking. Pretty interesting thing. We simply completed the SQL like doing like this. But in Python, we have to complicate our life to do this. Not so easy. But still, we can do. Right? Let it be. But we'll talk about SQL right now. Let's not go to Python. Okay? Maybe we can discuss about this in Python subsequently once again. Okay? But for now, let's go with SQL. But what you're trying to understand, the select star from table name will behave like what? If I slice and dice this, what could be our for loop? What could be our like collection types? And what could be our where class or our if condition? For loop can be what? Our select star from. Agree? Or select and from or for loop. What is the collection? Collection is nothing but star and the salary we are using, the column name we are using. That is collection. Then if is nothing but salary greater than 8,000. The filter that I'm applying. Can we slice and dice like this in the background? It will work like that. If you try to relate Python and SQL, you can able to learn it much better. Okay. If I have 10 records in a collection format, maybe let me quickly talk about this, right? Quickly talk about this. If I have 10 records in a table, right? How I store that data in a Python variable. The employees data I wanted to store in a Python variable. How do I store? I'll store it in what format? I can store it in a list of dictionary format. Sorry, list of tuple format I can store. Dictionary also I can store, but let me store it in a tuple format. We can store it in a list of tuple format. How? I'm going to have in a list of tuple of employee ID 1, employee first name is Stephen, last name is King, and some other columns. Okay, I don't want to put all this and all. Stephen, King, his salary is 24,000. His salary is 24,000. And some other blah blah columns we have. Some column like this we have. I don't bother. Then one more record I have. Let's have 2 records as an example. So I have a list of a list of how many tuples I have? How many tuples I have? 2 tuples. List of how many elements we have? 2 elements we have in the list. One tuple contains how many elements? 5 or 6, whatever. Yeah, 6 elements. The tuple is like what? The tuple is acting like what in our table? Great, a row or a record. And this entire list act like what in our table? The entire list act like what in our table? A table. It is acting like a table with 2 rows. Can I say like that? Can I envision like this? Right? So this is a table. I'm telling employees table. That's the reason I'm naming it as employees. I'm naming it as employees. Okay? Let it be. Let it be. I'm not mentioning something wrong here. Let it be. So we have list of 2 tuples present here. Employee ID 1, employee ID 2. Employee ID 2 has a value of Bruce, Ernest or Hoover with a salary of 6,000. Okay, let's assume. 2 records alone I'm considering in my table. I have not 31 records. I'm not interested in creating 31 records. Now I want to fetch all the data from this table. What I'll do? For I in employees, that's what the select statement is going to run in the background. Print of I. Are you finding all the records are displayed in the screen? I'm interested in not taking all the records from the table. I'm interested in only taking the customer ID or employee ID, employee first name, last name, and the salary. Or employee first name, last name, and salary alone I'm interested in taking. What I can do? I can go and do what? I use index. Great. I of 1 I will take, comma, I of 2 I will take, comma, I of 3 I will take. In database, we have structure, column name, data type and all mentioned. Here, I don't have that option. I'm not mentioning column name, data type and all. I'm just fetching only based on the index. So this row contains index of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm fetching 1. I'm fetching 2. I'm fetching 3. Now you are selecting all the records from the table. Will it go and iterate on all the records from the table? Will it go and take all the columns? The I contains all the columns. From the disk to the memory, will it bring? Then I'm going to only show interest on only the 3 columns. Is it doing like that way? That's the reason we are paying entire amount to our database storage. We are fetching everything, but we are displaying only what we wanted. So we did the same here, right? Select star from table name or select only these columns from table name. Whatever we did here, we are doing there. Agree or not, team? You are able to relate here? We are using a for loop to run a select statement. First of all, on entire data and assigning that each and every row in I. Then we are only selecting the columns what we wanted. So this is like a select from, and this is the columns what I'm printing. This is the print statement what I mentioned here. And this is the select from employees is nothing but the for loop. Able to relate, team? Much better, the data structure. This is how in the by using C++ or Java or some language, these people will run in the behind scene. We thought like we ran a query, right? They run a language in the behind scene to do this activity. When I ran this and they produce the result by using for loop and the, like whatever that index or whatever the notation they were using to select the data. Now I have one level down. I'm selecting every row. I want to display all the rows, but meeting some criteria. The salary should be greater than 6,000 I want to meet. Then what I'll do? I'll select all the columns. Print I. In what case? Print I if what? The I of what? I of 0, 1, 2, 3. If I of 3 is greater than 6,000. Else, don't do anything. Just I'll make like this for a while. Are you with me? Are you with me in this team? So I'm writing a if condition. If will run in what aspect? If is true means it is going to return a Boolean, right? If is true means it is going to print. If is false means it is not going to print. That's what the case we are using here. So if can be true or false, returning true or false. Like this, the where also can return true or false. You are able to interpret this. Where will do what in the background? Where will also expect what here? What's the type here? Where will also expect? Boolean. True or false only he will also expect. If salary is greater than 8,000, the where will check actually something like this. If 10,000 is greater than 8,000, then you go and allow. Like this, if I say, if I do that as a select statement, what it will return to me? It will return true, Boolean of true. Is it returning true? Is it returning true? True means not literally true, 1 or 0. Now, if I say whether 6,000 is greater than 8,000, what it will return? It will return 0. No, it is not greater than. So false it is returning. Same way, if this where returns 1, it will return the data from the table. If where returns false, it won't return the data from the table for a given record, whichever is not applicable with the condition. So Python and SQL are same. You are able to understand? But our life is simplified with SQL. Which one is easy? But which one is easy? Python has lot of notations to follow. Python itself is a simple language, but SQL is very, very simple language. So you are interested in learning SQL. Whatever we can achieve in Python, we can use SQL to achieve it much easily. You don't have to remember data structure. You don't have to remember the indentation. You don't have to remember the ternary operator. You don't have to remember, like the collection types. You don't have to remember the conditional structure, looping constructs. Very simple to learn language, right? I want to just bring some interest on SQL to you guys to say you have options in your Spark and other things and all when you are going to work, saying like what? I can either use SQL way of writing code or function-based programming way of writing code. Domain-specific language way of writing code I can do in Spark, or I can write a mere SQL way of writing code. Anything you can choose. So you can get familiarity in SQL means that helps you achieve lot of things. Trust me. Done thing. Okay. So you got an idea in the background how it works. Just wanted to bring this to you. You are all very clear, right? All of you are able to correlate with what the data structure, conditional structure, looping constructs in the foundational program that we learned, right? How much it is helping here. You try to understand. If you build a database like this tomorrow, right, of your own, you can go and interpret in this way. Okay, fine, Tim, leave it. What select with filter with where will do, you are able to correlate. You're all able to correlate, Tim. Right? Okay, what is this query will do? This is equivalent to what? You can see it in a bit different eyes now, right? What is this query is going to do? This query is going to apply more than one filter. With what option it is doing? What is this one we call it as in Python? It is doing what operation here? Yes, what operator is here? It is doing, yes, relational operator and logical operator. So we can write queries also with all these operators, but we don't call it in that terminology and all. We'll say what? And if I use, it is going to put both this condition is true means it is going to return the data. If not, it will return, it will not return the data. So what I'm going to do, select star from table name, select all the columns from table name, where both the conditions are true. I'm going to say where true and true. It will return me the data. If true and false, if I give, will it return the data? It won't. If I give true or false, will it return the data? You are with me? So we have the same logical operator here as well. Here also. Okay, team. In SQL also, we can have the logical operators. But this is true or false. What I am going to return? The output of a condition is going to return true or false. That is what is happening in the begin scene. Very, very important factor to consider. If this department ID is greater than equal to 60 and the salary is greater than 5,000, you return only those records like this. I'm asking. You're able to correlate here, right? So this has to return true. By taking the record, first record, it will go and check department ID is 60 or not. Then it will check for the salary of greater than 5,000 or not. Then it will return this result. Alexander Hunold is going to be returned. But this record will not be returned because David Austin is getting less than 6,000, 5,000. Right? That's how we treat this data as. But actually, it works in a way, this is going to be true and this is also supposed to be true, then only it will return the result. Or, if I put or here, how it will work? Any one of them has to be true. Any one is true, return those records. So it will return department of 60 records or salary of greater than 5,000 records.